I said, I got a brisket from Costco's, and it's a prime brisket. We're gonna go ahead and open it up. When you get up there, this thing right here is really in the way. So I'm gonna take that whole section off right there, but I'm gonna save it. Just like that, where I can see the side. So I'm gonna save all of that meat to do either burgers or tacos or something. And you want to not butcher it up. Get that skin off of there. This brisket actually looks pretty good. Usually they have a butcher mark in there where they cut it on the blade and you get a big mark right in the middle, so you got to kind of be careful. You don't want to get too much seasoning in there. I put it in the freezer for about 30 minutes before I started to trim it, because once you get fat that gets hot, it gets very hard to trim. Straighten this out right here. You're going to see when I turn around, I have a nice line now where I can see how thick my fat is to be able to know. I want about an 1/8 inch to a 1/4 inch of fat on the fat side, and where it's not so fatty whenever we go to trim it up, and a lot of that stuff will render out. I'm not gonna worry about that little stuff like this. Look, I'm not a competition barbecue guy, backyard barbecue guy that, you want it to look good, but yet I don't want to waste too much meat. I mean, it'd probably be totally different if I was cooking for a living, but this is for fun. Oh, this one digs deep into it right here in that middle part. And I don't want to put a hole, because I want everything to just flow. I don't want a pocket for it to hold moisture whenever I am smoking, because that's not going to allow the bark to get real crisp and have a pretty bark, because I do like that on my brisket. Not gonna get too carried away with it at all. So I notice which way my grain is running when I go ahead and trim my brisket. I want to cut this way on it. So just to keep that in my memory bank. So you'll see this side, how I straightened it out. You can see how deep it is right there. Let me get a little bit of this fat off on the side right here. turn it over and I'm gonna do the fat side. So I think that's good. All of that stuff will render out. It's not a lot in there at all. This is a pretty good looking brisket. Very thick right here, but pretty thin right here. But once I get a lot of this fat off right here, it's gonna be the same size. So the point, I'm gonna go ahead and take the fat off of. This is a fatty piece of meat to begin with. I'm gonna go about right here. So that's gonna give me my point that I don't wanna, you know, I want an 1/8 inch to a 1/4 inch fat right here. I don't know why. You can see right here, there's no fat at all right here, and I wish there was. Because that's going into the flat. And you wanna keep as much fat as you can that will render off to keep it moist. There we go. All right. I think we're pretty good. All right, what I'm gonna do tonight is I'm gonna put this thing on the grill at about 10 o'clock. I'm gonna let it rest for an hour before I put it on the grill, let it get to room temperature. I'm gonna cook it overnight at 215 degrees. I'm gonna let it smoke all night. I'm not gonna worry about it. I'm gonna probe it. I'll have it on my phone to where it beeps if I get to 165. I'm worried about 165 to wrap it. But I'll look at it at maybe 7 in the morning. So what I have here is black pepper, ground black pepper, kosher salt, garlic. I have a little bit of paprika in it, not much. So it's 60% ground black pepper, 30% kosher salt, and 10% granulated garlic, and a little bit of paprika. It's not even 10%. So I'm gonna put it in this little container that I can spread it evenly, because I want it to be spread evenly. That's how I get my bark. And I'll use some Worcestershire sauce as my binder. So I'm gonna rub the Worcestershire sauce all over it. Make sure I get the sides real good. And I'm gonna go ahead and pretty generous coat of my pepper mix, salt and pepper mix. And I'm gonna pat it in. I'm gonna get it on the ends, flip it over. This one had a lot of fat in it. I trimmed out a lot of all of this because it's not going to cook out. It's just going to be nasty. I'm trying to scrape off all the fat on a nice cut brisket. This is the side I want to look the best, so I'm going to get a lot of Worcestershire sauce on there. That's all of it. That's all I had. Wasn't that much. Probably down to here. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'll take a picture of it, or I'll get closer where you can see what it looks like. this. All right. It's got a good flow to it, so it shouldn't hold moisture on the top. That little bit of fat that I left on there, that's gonna render out. All right. Okay, that's it. I'll get a close-up for you where you can look at, and then I'm gonna let it sit for an hour. It's 9 o'clock right now. At 10 o'clock p.m. I'm gonna put it on, and I'm gonna let it go, and I'll check it about 7 o'clock in the morning. So you see how it looks with the salt and pepper and garlic on it. Let it sit for an hour. Let that seasoning start sinking into that meat, melting into it, and getting to room temperature. Hour resting. I'm gonna go ahead and get it on the grill. I have my prongs. Trying not to mess up the top of it by moving it around. Tuck all that under. I'm gonna go ahead and put my prongs through the hole they make for it. Right there. Just plug it in. And we'll see you at 7 o'clock in the morning. Well, good morning. 7 a.m. Time for some coffee. And check out this brisket, see what it looks like. Oh yeah, it looks good. Bark's nice and hard. It's not burnt at all. I'm gonna go ahead and spritz it. Real good. And continue to cook it till probably 165. We'll look at it then. Alright guys, so I have it at 160. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it and put it back on the smoker until it gets to 203 before I even check it. So, boy, it looks good. The bark is amazing. Everything looks good. I'm gonna go ahead and spritz it really good before I wrap it. I want to get it good and moist because I pulled off a lot of fat off of the point. I just want to make sure it stays good and moist. This won't mess up my bark. That's why I'm using pink butcher paper right here. So I'm gonna wrap it like this real tight. Right here. I'm gonna bring this one over. And I'm gonna bring it under. Not the best wrap job I've done. And then take this one, wrap it over. Very tight wrap. So there we go. I'm gonna put it back on the smoker till 203 before we check it. So I'm gonna probe it back in here with my probe so I can watch the temperature as it goes, and I don't have to keep opening it up. I'm gonna go ahead and kick the temperature up to 275 because I'd like to eat early afternoon. So that's what we're gonna do. Y'all stick with me. All right, I just pulled it off. It's ready. I'm gonna take a look at it again, but I started it at 9:16 p.m. last night at 210 degrees, and I woke up at 7 this morning, and I spritzed it. I spritzed it twice before I wrapped it. So I spritzed it. I brought it up to 250. 160 was my number where I went ahead and wrapped it. I liked the way it looked. The bark was pretty. So then I finished cooking it, and it is now 3 p.m. So I'm gonna cut a piece of the point off where I can make burnt ends on with, and you will see how I do the burnt ends also. So, and then what I'll do then is I'll wrap it back up and put it in my ice chest right here. I have a drip pan because I want to try to save all of this drippings from it, and I'm gonna let it sit for 2 hours. 2.5 hours, and we'll start preparing supper for around 6 o'clock. So it's gonna be perfect. It'll still be hot and great. So open it up, see what it looks like. So I'm just gonna tear it off. This. Oh yeah, that looks awesome. I'm gonna take this part right here and I'm not squeezing it, but you can see the bark looks awesome. And I'm gonna grab a little bit more, another little chunk, to make burnt ends for supper tonight. So that, I'm going to put the lid on that and leave it, and I'll cut the rest of that up at that time. Oh, this is so good. All right, so cover it back up, and I'm gonna put it in this ice chest. I have a drip pan under there, and I'm gonna cover it with a towel. And it is 3:07, so at 5:30 I'll look at it again and we'll start cutting up for supper. One of the reasons why I cut a piece of it off, and that was the point, was I'm gonna make burnt ends. So I put it in here to get it separated from the brisket, because 20 minutes before I start serving my brisket, I'm gonna cut this up into 1-inch squares, and we're gonna put it back on the pit with some barbecue sauce, and you're gonna see it's like beef candy. Now, I shouldn't have cut it twice, but when I looked at my first point, that piece, I didn't think it was going to be enough for all of us, so I went ahead and cut another piece off. That was a mistake. Try to only cut it once, and then you let it rest before you cut it again. So I'll cut it up again in about 2 hours, somewhere's in that range, and we'll put it back on the pit. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get burnt ends made and ready. So I have some brown sugar. I got a 1/4 cup of brown sugar. Any barbecue sauce you want to use, you can. You don't want to use too much, because what we're doing is we're gonna coat it with this sauce. And it's a lot of sweetness, and then put it back on the pit for 20 minutes. I'm gonna use a little bit of apple cider vinegar. Not a lot, maybe a tablespoon and a half. I'll use some syrup, steamed syrup that I have. Use honey. If you don't have this. And that's it. Right there. And I'm gonna cut these up in cubes. Get my brisket knife out. You see how I turn it apart instead of cutting through it? That was not a good cut. I'm gonna cut this one in half. You can see how pretty that is. Then I'm gonna go ahead and cut this without messing up the barks too much. I'm gonna go this way maybe. Yeah, this way, and I don't mess up my bark. Doesn't fall all apart. There we go. So that's gonna be for supper tonight. So I'm gonna put it in this pan. All in there. Mix up this real good. And I'm gonna pour it on all on top of. If I had a little piece of aluminum foil tray, disposable, that's what I'd be using, but I don't have one, so I'm just going to use this pot. It's going to be easy to clean after. So I'm getting it all, make sure all of it is coated real well. And you can see, but when it comes out, after it's caramelized, it's going to be so pretty and so good. So I'm going to put that on the pit and let it go for 20 minutes, and I'll start slicing up my brisket. All right, here's the brisket. Burn ends are almost done. You can see the grains going this way, so you want to cut this way on it. I'm going to take this and I'm going to freeze it. Today I'm going to eat out of this. And we'll see what it looks like. So, like I said, I'm gonna freeze this, and we use that for pizza, baked potato. But let's see what we got here. About a number 2 pencil. Oh yeah. And I still got a little fat underneath there. Left a little bit too much, I guess, but you can see just pulls apart. Beautiful smoke ring. So that's what's going to be for supper tonight. Get another one off of there. There we go. Moist. Great job on the brisket. Well, here's the finished brisket. The only thing I would change, I wouldn't go with an 18 pound again. I would go with 15 pounds or under. It took too long to cook, but the finished product looks amazing. It was juicy. The smoke ring is really nice. The bark is amazing. So I'm really happy with how it came out. The burnt ends were great. It just took too long to cook. a 15-pound would be more in my wheelhouse for time. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe if you like what we're